Welcome to the Access to Innovators podcast, powered by the premier life skills university, High Point University.
Hello, thank you for joining us. My name is Erin Morrow. I'm a junior from Windham, New Hampshire, studying middle grades math education. Today, I'm going one-on-one with Sue Downs, the CEO and co-founder of MyEyeDr, and High Point University's healthcare expert in residence. Sue, thank you for taking the time today to speak with us.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. So for the listeners who don't know you or your story, do you mind sharing a little bit about your background, where you started, and where your spark for entrepreneurship came from?
Sure. Well, it's a long story. We might use up our whole time, Erin, but I started in optical, again, 35 years ago, and really fell in love with it. I had grown up in a family where my father had worked at one employer his whole life. He really taught me to think about finding a good husband, a good career for when I was in college, and thinking about my family life. Ideally, my father would have had me be a school teacher. That was his ideal career. But when I came into optical, I instantly fell in love with it. It's not only healthcare, it's practice management, which is a unique thing in the healthcare industry of really understanding how to serve patients, when to serve them. It's retail, it's operations, it's managed vision care or managed care. So it has a lot of diversity really within the profession. And, grew up in it, had developed into different promotions throughout the years. For my first, probably 12 or 13 years, my company was bought, right? It was bought by corporate America. I had two children, one who's an alumni of High Point, and at the time he was 6 weeks old. My oldest was 7 years old, and I moved to San Antonio, Texas at the time, which was, I was the only female on an all-executive team of leading an optical chain, which today is called VisionWorks. It was called Eye Care Centers of America. And to be honest with you, Erin, I wasn't really welcome in Texas, right? I wasn't welcome as one of the female leaders on the team. It was a different experience for my family and I all together. And I say today that it was my business boot camp. I learned so much, right? And I was tested in so many ways. And, I think at first the colleagues that honestly have become some of my good friends over the years, really wanted to see if they could break me. But in the end, they realized the value that I added and how we became a team and we continued to grow together. And so, if you take a break from that, my father was diagnosed with a glioblastoma, a stage 4 brain tumor. And I knew that he did not have a lot of life left in him, a lot of length of his life. And so decided to leave corporate America. I felt like they were too focused on what the profits were and what the next transaction for the company was, rather than on the patient's outcomes and understanding the associate experience and really making it a purpose-led company. And so spent the last few months of my father's life with him. And during that time, I decided I'd really love to have my own company, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have the funds to do it, so I need investors. And the previous investor, who's the other co-founder, did have the capital to put it together. But I took the experience of my father of how here the man is dying. And so many of the conversations are based on what is this insurance? What is he eligible for? How do we get it authorized? How do we, at the end of his life, how do we even move him from one clinic to another clinic so that he can be with his closest family and friends at the end of his life? And so I decided to take my optical experience and put it together with a managed vision care experience that when you come into our office, we're less focused on what insurance you have, how it works, what you're entitled to, but rather what your eye care needs are, how we can make you see and look your best, and really how can we protect your vision for the future so that you can live your best life. And so that was the creation.
That's really great. How do you combat the constantly changing market? I feel like I see on the news and social media just so much stuff in the medical industry and insurance companies too. Like I'm sure there's a lot of competition. How do you combat that?
So it's a big landscape, right? There's a political landscape of, our corporate practice of medicine. Are we making the wrong decisions? Are we more interested in the financial means versus the outcomes? When you look at kind of the forward thinking, there's so much research, right? So for us, we're MyEyeDr. We fit and sell contact lenses as one of our components of services. There's a lot of technology now that's being delivered through a contact lens to help with allergy eyes, to help with diabetes, other things. So that's evolving really fast. And then, I always wanted to be a marketing leader, but I think because it's changing so fast, like what you know today is going to change tomorrow, and you have to be continually evolving. I think the biggest thing we've done is continue to invest in our talent, bringing our talent along, hiring the best in talent. We've grown so fast. When I started the company, we saw one patient. From 2001 to 2012, we ended up with almost $90 million in sales.
Wow.
Today, I'm hoping to finish this year closer to $1.5 billion, right? So with that, you have to continually invest in staff and development and change.
That's great. So networking and relying on your support system is something you talked about, and that's something we believe strongly in here at High Point University. How have you used your network and support system to propel your company? I know you just talked about using your network to hire marketing people. Are there any other aspects where you used your support system?
Yes. So I use, first of all, the network industry to really help me. For me, it can't just be a benefit to my eye doctor, to Sue Downs. When you have a true partnership, you help your vendors and your other partners grow as much as they do. So how can I add value to their company while they continue to support my company, whether it's on the marketing efforts or training efforts or new product development? The other thing is I'm involved in a lot of groups outside of my industry. So I'm in one of the top CEO PE investment companies in the country, where we collaborate on a regular basis to think about sharing ideas, challenges with each other. We come together a few times a year for a summit to learn from each other and continue to bring those forward. So it's always evolving, and it's a 100% investment all the time.
That's great. What do you think the most challenging part of the start of your company was?
That's a good question. I would say that I wouldn't be here if I didn't make a lot of mistakes. Right? I learned the most from those mistakes. Believe me, I didn't celebrate the successes, right? And so it was really getting the culture built. It was getting people to understand what the company was about and what our purpose was, and not just coming from Sue Downs, but coming from each associate, and making sure that when you come into one of our offices, that they can display, they can portray, they can live that purpose to you, to really understand that it's more than an eye exam, right? There's a lot of confusion in our industry. A lot of people think that an eye exam is just what's a refraction. So do I need a new pair of glasses or a new pair of contacts? I want to see a little bit better. But the eyes are actually the entry point of our overall health. We can tell things like diabetes, glaucoma, heart disease, etc. And so, getting the employees to live that, of understanding that it is, if you thought about your life today, you took a moment, you closed your eyes, and you thought about some of the most special moments in your life, what would it be like if you couldn't see them? The happiest day, the saddest day, right? Graduating soon from High Point University, right? Celebrating something with your family. And so vision truly is a precious sight that I don't think we want to lose. And so that was the hardest thing, was really building and instilling the culture. And then I would say, continually developing and bringing talent along. When you're growing so fast, it's really easy sometimes for people to want to be successful, but if they're not invested in themselves and in their development, they can't keep up with the growth. They have to have an open mindset to change.
Yeah, I think there's this conception out there that when one gains more and more success, mistakes and challenges come less often. But in a previous interview, and what you kind of touched upon now, is you spoke about how you're constantly becoming more resilient through your mistakes and just putting yourself out there. At HPU, we obviously believe strongly in the growth mindset. So what are your thoughts on that? Can you think of a time recently where you were challenged and how you overcame that?
Well, look at the pandemic, right? Yes. So I think for everyone's information, I'm invested by private equity. I joined private equity in 2012 as a means of growing my company, right? And so they're some of the smartest people. And when you go through a private equity transaction, they really, they interrogate you, right? They look at every single part of your company, your talent, your systems, your brand, etc. I joked with them. I said, you guys never once asked me what I would do if there was a pandemic. So I was completely unprepared for that. I think the first year was actually not the hardest when we went into COVID. I think we leaned in with our culture. We leaned in with empathy. It was easy to connect people. People were grateful. I think it was the following years, right? The 2021 and 2022, which especially 2022, I call a very unpredictable year. Everybody wanted something different. We don't know if we want to work from home, right, or hybrid, but we want development and we want promotion and we want growth. We've had inflation. We've had all kinds of economic challenges. People were withdrawn through the COVID, right? So we've seen a lot of outcomes of healthcare that have not been healthy, from depression to obesity to, just not taking care of ourselves. So, I would say that was my biggest
challenge.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who had an idea and wanted to found a company? Do you think there are certain characteristics that one needs?
Well, you've got to have obviously drive and passion, right? Like you have to believe fiercely in what you're doing. But I think you also have to have experience, right? I wouldn't be able to be here today or be helping High Point continue to grow in the student entrepreneurship and healthcare if it wasn't for understanding my industry and my business. So I think you've got to really, really learn, right? And it's not just what company you're developing or what you're doing. You have to understand about finance. You have to understand about marketing. You have to understand the compliance and the legal aspect. Because while you can hire people to represent you and really grow and protect that part of your company, at the end of the day, it's your company, right? And the buck stops with you, and you need to be invested in it. And today, I think one of the greatest, things of success, of my personal success, has been that I know every nook and cranny of my company. And on a regular basis, it breaks, right? But you go to where that kink is in the hose, and you find it and you fix it. So hopefully it doesn't happen again, but by knowing your business. So I would say continually, besides passion and drive, make sure you learn as much as you can about the business world.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great advice. High Point University is a God, family, and country school with our values built heavily upon the grace of charity and giving back to the community. I saw that you were involved in a lot of philanthropic organizations. So would you mind telling us a little bit about them and why you got involved?
Yeah, so MyEyeDr, and honestly, Sue Downs, we don't really do a specific charity, right? Like one cause. You see a lot of companies that have really great programs where if you buy a pair, you get a pair, or they donate a pair or something. I believe because we were really founded in communities, so we partner with local doctors in each community, and we make sure that they get to do what they love best, of seeing their patients, of delivering that care. And we provide a management company that really is in the background of helping them with training and credentialing and so forth. And so because they come from that community, I think it's really important to support the individual communities. So we do a lot of things around vision, preventing blindness, foundation for preventing blindness, etc. I've also had a lot of personal, challenges in my life. I talked about my dad. So I've supported the Brain Cancer Society. My mother passed away of Alzheimer's. I support that, right? We've had suicide in our family, so we support suicide prevention. I think it's everything, right? But one of the biggest things that I'm really focused on right now is making sure we can get into these communities and get into really these schools where these kids don't have the benefit of learning, and how do we make sure they can see properly first to connect their vision to their learning?
Yeah, I have a vested interest in that myself, so that's really great.
Right?
So life skills are valued a lot, especially at High Point, but they're also valued in today's workforce. Do you have any advice for students who are on the job search or looking to apply their life skills?
So first of all, I'm really glad I'm not your age, because I think it's the hardest, to me, in my 55 years of being on this planet, right? This must be the hardest time to figure out what you want to do, because you just have so many choices. And I see it in the employees we hire, right? And so I think you've got to really understand what you want out of your company. You've got to understand what company you're working for. Are your beliefs and values aligned with them? Because it can't just be, to me, about making a career of getting the next promotion or getting the next pay increase. You've got to be able to really be your best. You've got to be able to contribute to that company, and they've got to be able to invest in you. And that's a partnership. It's not just a one-way situation.
Do you think it's valuable for students who graduate, they go into a job and they realize they don't like it, they spent 4 years studying it, but once they're actually doing it, they decided they don't like it. Would you say it's the right idea to make the pivot and learn something new and transition to a new career? What would your advice be on that situation?
Yeah. So, I get to work with a lot of students at High Point, and honestly, we mentor a lot of students through MyEyeDr as well too, right? Like we love resident and intern programs. So first of all, I would encourage you before you get to the 4 years of that investment, that along your high school and your college years that you do some type of shadowing or internships to make sure you are aligned with what you're doing, right? Because I think it's very common. My son, again, as an alumni, he changed his major a few times in the beginning, right? And really ended up in a different place than when he came into High Point. So, but I think, first of all, if you find out at the end of the 4 years that you've really made the wrong decision in your education, right, and you don't like doing the career you've put yourself to, it doesn't mean there's just that one career, right? So there could be a lot of different aspects of it, right? If I majored in marketing, can I go for graphic design? Can I go for, education or training? Like there's a lot of different components. So I would explore more of that to see what you could utilize and connect to help your career. But it's important to find the career that you love.
Yes.
Right? Because if you don't, work should not be work. I hate the word work, right? I love High Point because it's a life skills university. I love when Dr. Cobain changed that. And I loved my son going here because it wasn't about an education. It was about finding a purpose in life. And what you have to make sure you do is that you find a career and a calling in life, because then you won't care how much you work, how little you work, what days it is. You'll just come to do your very best work every day.
Yeah, that's something I personally love about High Point is that it's a life skills university and we find what we like through those internships. I know we have a 99% guaranteed internship, so I really value that.
It's crucial, right? And it's really, you need to understand too as students, it's really important to the employer groups. It's a great way of us getting, graduates into our companies and getting them connected to our culture and purpose too, especially if you're a purpose-driven organization.
Well, thank you, Ms. Downs, for joining us today and sharing your extraordinary advice and achievements. We are so grateful for your commitment to mentoring HPU students and joining a remarkable, innovative program that inspires students and campus community. Thank you for joining me on the Access to Innovators podcast powered by High Point University.